Hello and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And go ahead.
And I'm Krebs.
Krebs, welcome.
He's the new Val.
Well, hold on. You know, if Val ever heard you say that, Tracy.
She doesn't listen to the show.
Only Val can be the new guy at any given time.
Yeah. Krebs, welcome to the show. Val is off adventuring in San Diego at San Diego Comic-Con, so we will not miss her or be sad for her at all because she's doing what we would all love to be doing this weekend.
Usually we would be feeling bad for her, but or missing her. But on this one, she's meeting Miles Morales. She's hanging out at San Diego Comic-Con. Not hanging out. She is working. But
she's working, yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely what her pictures and videos make it seem like. She's working.
Networking.
No, so Val is out this week doing that. So we'll be excited to hear how that went, especially with all of the changes with studios and strikes and things going on there. So I'm sure it's a very different experience this year than it has been in years past. But Krebs, we're glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your show, where you're from, who you are, for our listeners that may not be familiar with your work.
Oh, I expect your listeners to be like 99.8% completely unfamiliar with me, but I am Krebs. I am from the podcast Dungeon Crawlers Radio, and we had an opportunity a handful of months ago when the D&D movie dropped to meet you guys, and we just had an absolute blast. We've been looking for excuses and opportunities to do like a little crossover episode, and I am super thrilled. In all honesty, I'm so happy to be here and to be hanging out with you guys. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Krebs, we're glad to have you, and especially for why you're here and what you want to talk about. So Tracy and I and Val, we really do like the community aspect of what we can do with the podcast, and we've been doing some events to raise money for American Cancer Society, and we're getting ready to run a 10K in January, and we're raising money for that and things like that. And you guys are doing something similar. You're raising money for a good cause, and you've got an event coming up. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that this particular event might appeal to your audience specifically.
Great.
We are on July 29th. I don't know how many people knew this or not, but on July 29th, it is the day and date 40th anniversary of the sci-fi fantasy film Krull, which is one of those movies that can be somewhere between divisive and completely obscure. It's a really strange thing, but I can't wait to talk about this movie in the context of this episode. But the purpose of this event is not only to celebrate the 40th anniversary of this what I consider beloved film, but also to raise money for Primary Children's Hospital. Yeah. In fact, our showrunner Daniel, who is the one who created and runs Dungeon Crawlers Radio, one of his children was born with a serious heart defect. And if it wasn't for Primary Children's Hospital, she would not be with us today. They literally saved her life, and she is doing great. And she is living, she's living her best life all the time. She's awesome. So big, huge thank yous. Infinite gratitude to Primary Children's Hospital. We wanted to use this event to do some kind of good, and we landed on raising some money for them. And what we decided to do was we did all the legwork we had to do to get a permit to show Krull publicly, and Jordan Common stepped up and made us a sweetheart deal to show the movie in one of their theaters.
Nice.
And on the morning of July 29th, starting at 9:30, the doors will open to the public. People who have made some donation to Primary Children's Hospital, we ask that people make a minimum of an $8 donation per person attending. And if you do that, you get to come see the show. And we will also have present this myriad memorabilia that someone like, I don't know, some super movie geek or something has been slowly collecting over the years.
Is that, wait. Is that an Atari?
This is a working Atari copy of the Kroll video
Wow.
game. It is both extremely
Nice.
difficult, and I remember playing this as a kid because I loved the movie, and we had an Atari, and so
Yeah.
absolutely I got that game. But we have that, and of course we have, multiple formats upon which the movie exists. I didn't know this, but apparently there was a format in the 80s called
Mm-hmm.
CED. I didn't know this until
Mm-hmm.
recently. I'm a video. I used to be a film student. I'm a video audio kind of guy.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this format in my life until I was showing the prices right to my children, as every good parent must. The Bob Barker era.
Okay. All right.
And
Mm-hmm.
they had a home video player as one of the prizes. And I was going to tell my kids about VHS or beta. And right as I was about to say something, they showed it. And I was like, I don't know what the heck that is. That's completely
Mm-hmm.
alien to me. And it ends up, it's this giant
Oh,
nonsense.
laser
Yeah.
disc.
No, not
No,
a
it's
laser
not a
disc.
laser disc. It's
Oh,
not. It's like it's on a film or like a tape type thing.
whoa.
And it's weird. It's weird.
It,
It's like a big floppy disk that has a movie on it.
yeah, it's think vinyl because that's that.
Yeah, yeah, it's vinyl.
Oh my gosh.
But here's the cool thing, and I know this is not what the episode is about, but now I'm going to geek out. So hold on, kid. But the the disc that's in this round vinyl like disc, if you take it out of the slip cover, which you really shouldn't, but I've done 40 times, it has that rainbow effect like a laser disc,
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
more plastic like vinyl, has a
Okay.
coating on it. And here's the thing that blew my mind: the grooves. It's got all these grooves like a vinyl
It's
record.
crazy.
Uh-huh.
Grooves are 40 times smaller than audio only vinyl, but it carries the video data and the stereo audio data.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
It is
So
nuts.
so I also had never heard of this until a few weeks ago. And I came across, when you get on those video rabbit holes
Oh
on
yeah.
YouTube or something, and you're
Uh-huh.
like, I don't know why I'm
Never heard
watching
of
all
it.
of
Go
these.
on.
Yes. And so it was these nostalgic sounds from the 90s, and they were all these different video types. And they showed one of these players, the CDE or CED, whatever it is, players.
Mhm,
I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I have no idea what that is.
mhm.
And so I had to start researching it and learned all about it. Yeah,
It's
it's wild.
blowing my mind.
Yeah, I learned
Yeah.
all about it to the tune of about $500, but it was worth it. So the point is,
I did not
I
invest that much time or effort or money.
well, and now I have a player that I play 6 movies on, including the original Star Wars trilogy. But let's talk about that in a second. The point is, we're throwing this event. I have done all the legwork via eBay and my bank account to bring together this Kroll memorabilia that I plan to put on display. I've also gotten in touch with one of the original cast members who has been so immensely generous and has recorded for us a little bit of Q&A and a little message supporting our cause. And
Nice.
at 9:30 we open the doors to the public. People get checked in. At 10 o'clock we're doing the pre-show reel and discussion, and saying a huge thank you to Jordan Commons and others who were involved. And then at 10:30 we will be showing the movie, but not just the movie, right?
Mhm.
I took the Blu-ray transfer, and using some software, I did a remastering. And so now
Wow.
it is quite genuinely the best looking this movie has ever been in my experience over the 40 years that I've been watching. I have been watching this movie for the last 40 years. I think I've been thinking about watching another movie, but every time I do, I'm like, yeah, but Kroll.
I could watch
So, yeah, you're like best sci-fi fantasy films of the 80s, and I'm like, I know which one we're talking about. Um,
that.
but we're holding this event. We're raising money for Primary Children's Hospital, and if anyone who's interested in either attending the event or who just wants to support the cause, will go to tinyurl.com/Krolltimate. That's KRULLTIMATE, Krolltimate. Then you can support the Krolltimate charity event, which will be held this coming Saturday, July 29th, 9:30 a.m. at Jordan Commons in Sandy, Utah.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
if somebody can they just buy tickets at the door? Can they just pay at the event?
Absolutely. All you have to do, we'll have like a little QR code set up and all that jazz. If they show up and they haven't donated yet, the
Hmm.
only cost of entry is to donate $8 per person.
How do you beat
Uh,
that?
yeah. It's half the cost of a standard ticket to a movie anyway. And there will be all sorts of fun and shenanigans. Oh, there is one more thing. This is brand new as of yesterday. Can I throw one more thing in?
Please.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
I recently got in touch with another Kroll super fan, and his name is Sean Swanner, and he's on Facey Space and Facebook, and he loves 80s sci-fi and fantasy films, and he's a really talented, accomplished artist. He makes these sort of like new style mashup posters, and he's been doing this for years and years. He intended originally, before I said anything about this event, to make a commemorative 40th anniversary poster to be released on the day, on July
Oh,
29th.
wow.
And so I got in touch with him and I was like, hey, can I just unveil your poster as part of this event? And he is 100% in. But yesterday he contacted me and he said, hey, I've got this idea. And what he's willing to do is he's willing to donate a print of his handcrafted poster as a prize to be given randomly via drawing style to everyone who donates
Uh-huh.
at this event Saturday the 29th. So now we have a unique, one-of-a-kind piece of art that someone could win a print of that is being handcrafted by a Kroll superfan as we speak. So
That's cool.
something brand new that just happened yesterday.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's really
awesome.
cool.
What a great event. I hope that everybody turns out for this. I hope you guys are super successful raising some money. Primary Children's is such a great cause. We had a daughter go in for surgery on the 7th of July at Primary Children's. They took great care of her. It was awesome. Just outpatient surgery, but they were great and just made her super comfortable, made us super comfortable. They do amazing work at Primary Children's. So I think this is an awesome cause. If you guys have never seen Kroll, and you may be in that boat because I may be in that boat, here's what I know about Kroll. Here's what I know. My parents had a board game of Kroll, and I had no idea what this was.
Okay.
And we used to play with it all the time, and I thought it looked cool, but I have no idea. I don't know where it is. Krebs, I'm sorry, we've lost track of this game.
Like,
I
what's
don't
the
know
address
what's
of
ever
your
happened
parents'
to
house?
it.
I will
But,
go through your board games. I will find it.
Perfect. But anyway, that's my experience with it. I kind of never knew what it was, so I'm interested in coming just so I can see this movie, but also so I can support a great cause. And I think this sounds like a fantastic event that you guys have put together. So
Thank you very kindly. We're actually, you know, we're trucking toward our goal. We're not there yet, but if at this point, if everyone donates even just the minimum,
Mhm.
we will exceed our goal. Our goal is not that high, to be honest with you. Our goal is $1,000, and with the number of seats that we have in the theater, if everyone were to donate just the minimum, we'd just about hit that goal.
That's
And
awesome.
we've had some very generous people step up, and they've donated well more than the minimum, and they've been very kind about it. Some of them have been very anonymous about it, and I just want to say thank you to those who have donated. I want to say thank you to those who will donate, and I also want to say thank you to everyone who made board and card games about Kroll, because they're really fun to play. Now, I used to have the board game, and I don't have it anymore, but I found one on eBay that I am hoping to pick up very, very soon. But for the meantime, I have the card game, and we should play this sometime. But that's not the point. The point is, Kroll is actually one of those things that quite honestly, while it has been divisive as I've spoken to people about it. I don't know if you guys listen to Dungeon Crawlers Radio, and by you guys I mean the people I'm talking to right now, the hosts and the audience. But if you've listened to Dungeon Crawlers Radio over the last 3 years or so, when Daniel made the ridiculously stupid decision to make me a permanent fixture on the show, I started doing this shtick where every time we had a guest on that we were interviewing, where I was interviewing them for the first time,
Mhm.
I would do this lightning round segment, and I asked them a bunch of softball questions. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite comfort food? That sort of thing. And then at the very end, I go, and finally, what is your stance on the 1983 sci-fi fantasy film Kroll? And what's interesting is that you have this large population of people, like you were mentioning, that just they haven't seen it, or maybe they don't even know what it is. Some people have
Mhm.
heard of it, but they just haven't seen it. And then you get those precious few people who have seen it, and either they really enjoy it, anywhere from like enjoy to love,
Uh-huh.
like some Krebses I know,
Uh-huh.
or they vehemently hate it. And I think that's so interesting because in recent years, and this will probably come up in today's discussion, but in recent years, like the last 3 or so, but it started about 10 years ago, I started having discussions about this film with some of my film crafting buddies, some of my filmmaking buddies.
Mhm.
And it was one of those moments where I sat down. I was literally having sushi with one of my dearest friends, and we were just sitting there talking about Kroll because we just like to geek out about it sometimes. And I go, wait a second. This character at the very beginning of the movie says this. Where did that come from? And then we started like, oh, that's interesting. Wait. But then this other character says that. How did they know that? And then we started doing this rabbit hole thing, and it becomes this whole like Illuminati level conspiracy thing. It's like, no, what happens is that there are all these like story hooks that were never fully explored in the original film, but they leave these glorious opportunities for fan theory and for like expansion of the mythos. This film is one of those films that if you experience it on the surface, then you're going to have a very surface experience, right? You're going to have a very tropish sci-fi fantasy 80s sword and sorcery versus aliens type experience. But if you take a moment to have a conversation, to ask just a few questions, not in the attitude of like, oh, I found a plot hole because I like to destroy things, right? Not like that. But if you ask questions like, whoa, where could this lead? All of a sudden, it becomes one of the best, one of the all-time best sci-fi / fantasy type experiences, and it welcomes fan interaction. I think it's one of those things that a lot of people overlook, and I can't wait to share the joy of that film with people on Saturday, July 29th at the Sandy Jordan Commons Megaplex Theaters.
Awesome. We will make sure that we include the link so people can donate in the description for the video, as well as on our Facebook site and other social media outlets, so that people can go there and donate. I think it's a great cause. And I'm going to try to make it to the show, Tracy. I'm going to try to go.
I would
love
to
maybe we can go together.
Who knows? You might win a one of a kind poster print. So, there's that too.
We can,
I hope I don't. Not because I don't want the print, but I'm sure that there will be others there that are a bigger fan of the movie since I have not seen it yet.
Yeah.
And I would love for it to go to one of them and not, just some guy who's seeing it for the first time.
And how often do you get to see a movie that you haven't seen before from the 80s on the big screen as your first experience?
In high definition, with a crowd of people who are either going to support you or shout you down. But in any case, they're going to support a great cause. Thank you very much.
Yep.
We're united in the cause. Yes.
Watch it in high definition on CED. Wait, no.
I had a mouthful of water just then. That was.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So well.
That was perfect. Congratulations!
Awesome.
I officially like the show now.
Yes, we've done it, Tracy. We've gained a fan.
Yeah.
So we're excited about that. So today we thought, since you're on the show and you've got this great event coming up, we would talk about some of the best or some of our favorite, because that's not necessarily the same thing, sci-fi and fantasy movies of the 1980s, which was an interesting decade for sci-fi and fantasy.
Loved it.
If I could be so bold as to say something like that.
Dude, everything in the 80s was awesome.
Yes, yeah. I agree. No, I agree with that. It was typically either awesomely groundbreaking and pushed the art and the industry forward in that area, or it was an awesomely hilarious mistake.
Yes.
And they're really, while we might be able to find examples of the middle ground, it was few and far between.
Yes, it was a decade of extremes. That's for sure.
Yeah, for every Raiders of the Lost Ark that you had at the movie theater, you had New Coke or Coke 2. It was just awful.
I thought you were going to say Battle Beyond the Stars or something like that. Which has a special place in my heart too. But I promise you guys, I swear, I know what you've heard from me so far, but I promise you I have good taste in movies.
Ice Pirates, come on.
Ice Pirates, baby. Ice Pirates.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Krebs. We don't judge people's taste in movies. We celebrate people that just like movies, and we don't care what movies you like. We've reviewed, we did Rubber, which is amazingly weird.
Oh, I know that one.
We don't. Yeah, see, you're in good company. You're fine.
We might be the 3 most dangerous people on the planet right now. Let's do this.
Talking about Rubber with Val, and both of us reverted back to our film school days. It was just so great.
Oh man, it looks like a film school project.
It totally does. Yeah.
Well, when one of your redeeming qualities is that you have Wings Hauser in your movie, that's kind of that says far more than the poster ever could.
This is so
Yeah,
true.
that's a good point. That's a good point. All right, Tracy, start us off. What are some of the movies that you remember? Because this was your jam. The '80s
Yeah.
was kind of your jam.
Yeah. I
I
was
was
born
I
in
was
the
still a little
70s.
young in the '80s. Yeah.
Oh, welcome to being old, Tracy. Let's go.
I am the old guard on the show. Yes.
You and I might be competing for that title, but please, I can't. I'm
75.
excited to hear this. I'm excited to hear this.
75. Where are you hitting?
Oh, I'm just 3 years younger than you.
Okay. All right.
No. He's like, no. I'm 75 now. I wasn't born in
Yeah, that's his
75.
age. Yeah, that's not the year he was born. Sorry, he misspoke. He's 75. He looks great though. He looks great for
He still has
75.
hair. Yeah. Jealous.
No, you're 75, Tracy. You're 75.
Yes, you're 7. That's okay.
You don't have hair.
That's
Okay, that's the age. It's showing
That's the
now.
age,
Go ahead,
yeah.
Tracy.
One of my favorites. My mom was a big Martin Short fan, and Inner Space.
yes.
And it reminded me because I loved at Disneyland. I loved Adventures Through Inner Space, which is now Star
Yes.
Tours. But
Which is yes.
yeah. But I used to think they would like legit. I legitimately believe that you would shrink on that ride.
Okay, no joke. As a kid, like my first time going to Disneyland, I rode that ride and we came out and I was crying so hard. I had the heebies. And I just remember telling my mom, I'm still small. I'm still small. They didn't make me the right size. I was freaking out. Thanks, Disney.
So you're still small.
I was in a stroller when I said that. But yes, I remember seeing Inner Space. My mom in the early 80s on, she was a divorcee, and so the four of us, my mom, my brother, my sister, and I, we had moved in with her parents to kind of like recover from that whole thing. I was so little, I don't remember very much of it, but what I do remember is that my mom would frequently take us to the movies, which I think molded me in ways that I think she's grateful for and simultaneously regrets. But she took us to see movies at the theater pretty frequently. And the thing is, I tell my wife this. I'm like, oh, I saw that in theaters when I was a kid. I saw that in theaters. And there are so many movies I probably shouldn't have seen in theaters as a kid. You know, thanks Beetlejuice. But anyway. But we saw Inner Space with Dennis Quaid and Martin Short and holy crap, and Meg Ryan. That film, bro, that was some good stuff. I'm so glad you chose Inner Space. I love that movie.
Oh, just the whole idea of shrinking and going down into the body.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like been done a lot. I mean, you've got Rick and Morty, which is a great episode. You've got all sorts of stuff, but at the time, that
Magic School Bus, I think, has done it a few times.
Magic School Bus, yeah, that was after my time, but I know that episode or that series. Yes,
that is awesome.
Well, what an interesting choice, Tracy, because when I think science fiction, I immediately go to like outer space, spaceships, that kind of thing. And I know that that's like just one part of science fiction. So I'm glad you brought in something like that because that's totally different than what I was initially thinking when I was thinking of my list of movies. So great choice.
I mean, there's so many. We talked about a few on the show. We did Time Bandits.
We did do Time Bandits.
Flight of the Navigator.
Flight of the Navigator was on my list, man. Yeah.
Was that your jam?
I loved Flight of the Navigator. I remember when that came out. I remember seeing that in theaters, and it was just so cool. And like you go back and you watch it. As a kid, I just remember the spaceship being cool. I remember the robot being cool. Pee Wee Herman does the voice of the robot. And anyway, I remember all of that stuff and the little creature that he had that was kind of like the pet in the spaceship. Yeah. Well, you watch it now, and it's like a really sad movie because he comes back, and it's years later, and like it destroyed me. Watching it now, it's just a totally different experience because a lot of stuff went over my head.
I'm still young. It didn't make me the right age. I'm still young. I didn't fix it.
I came out younger.
My younger brother is so much bigger than me now. That's a good point, actually. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought like it's this sort of like happy tragedy that he like he gets to keep his childhood, but he got to skip over some really like formative years in the 80s. They're like, well, you're gonna have to live in the 90s now. You know, like
which is how I remember my childhood going, because I was born at the beginning of the 80s, and
Right.
really I remember most of the stuff in the
Most of
90s,
the
to be
90s. Yeah,
honest.
yeah,
But
yeah.
uh, the other thing that I always remember about Flight of the Navigator is Nerf came out with these turbo footballs
Oh
that looked
yeah,
just like the spaceship.
just
I
like the
didn't know.
And
ship.
I don't
so
remember this.
I had one, and I never played football with it, but it was my spaceship from Flight of the Navigator every time.
It
So
wasn't so
Nice.
it
there you
wasn't
go.
like a promotional piece. It just so
No.
happened that
Oh,
the
Yeah.
like
no licensing.
yeah, well, because I mean, it was just that odd like almond shape that was more
Mhm.
aerodynamic.
Right.
It
Yep.
because I remember I think look, I think Nerf probably took some inspiration from the movie in terms of like the
Probably.
color that they made the balls and all that stuff. But like it's very much the same shape that we see today in a lot of respects, where it has like some like pseudo aerodynamic
Grooves.
striations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and you're
Yep.
supposed to get like a perfect spiral every time, and it's like, well, try
Yeah.
having
That
some
was the point.
athleticism, kid, but whatever.
For
And
those
Yeah.
of us not athletically inclined, we appreciated those
It
striations.
didn't.
Yes.
It
that's
didn't.
right.
If you didn't know how to throw a spiral before, you still didn't know how to throw a
That's
spiral
right.
with the Nerf
That's right.
football. It didn't actually happen that it worked.
Every dad who bought that for his kid thinking that it was going to turn him into Troy Aikman or something, like, ended up doing the Bob's Burgers. Oh my gosh. Like every time the kid would throw the ball and it would just like go end over end. But it had that spaceship shape. I remember thinking the same thing. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, it's Flight of the Navigator. But it's not. No, no,
Yep.
no. It's but yeah, those Nerf
Just
balls were
happened to look like
reminiscent.
that.
Yeah.
Yep. What about you, Krebs? What are some of the movies or
Oh
a
my
movie you
gosh.
remember? I mean, besides Kroll. I'm sure we're going to get into Kroll at some point.
In 1983, there was this movie. No, just joking. It, look, there's the obvious low hanging fruit, and I want to avoid those, so I'm just going to shout them out really fast because
Sure.
they're overly obvious. Like the first film I remember seeing end to end in a theater, the first one that comes to mind is Return of the Jedi. That was like a formative film for me, and it's
Hmm.
still one of my all time favorites. I also saw Flight of the Navigator. I saw Inner Space, as we mentioned earlier. You also have like Back to the Future, which I think
Sure.
qualifies, and that's all fine and dandy. But like one of the movies that absolutely blew the back of my head off when I saw it in theaters was The Last Starfighter.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's one of
Yes.
those films I haven't revisited in a dog's age,
Yeah.
but it's one that I want to show my kids. My kids are one of them. My daughter just turned 12 and my son is like 8 3/4. He'll make sure that I say it that way.
Hmm. Hmm.
uh and and they're in that really weird stage where I want to show them stuff from my childhood, and if it's not up to par with like
Mhm.
their technical expectations, then it's old and dumb, dad. But
Yep.
meanwhile they're watching the most asinine things on YouTube, right? And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know, maybe I should parent them or something. but
No.
but
It's
the last
overrated.
no, but The Last Starfighter is one of those films that I think is utterly vital to where we've
Mhm.
come in terms of like adopting CGI and
Mhm.
using technology in the way that we make films, but also it was just a fabulous story. It was just an exceptional story. It took elements of the zeitgeist, the idea of like the arcade cabinet and how it was, ruining
Yes.
our kids' minds, but this became their recruiting tool for finding the best starfighters across the known solar systems and such. Like what a I'm sorry, spoilers. But anyway,
Oh,
I
it's fine.
but I think that's one of those films that is kind of woefully underappreciated
Totally.
in our current age, but it absolutely pushed forward the art of sci-fi in cinema.
Yeah. So it's basically, for those that aren't familiar with it, it's basically the new Gran Turismo movie, but in space.
That is 100% true. I hadn't thought of that. Except the biggest difference between The Last Starfighter and Gran Turismo is that one of them is based on real events and the other one is Gran Turismo. But
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, every time that comes up, based on a true story, I'm like, is it though?
is it
Is
the
it?
is it the yeah, I hadn't made that connection before, but
I
it really does, like storyline wise, it parallels Gran Turismo. But in all honesty, like Last Starfighter came out in 1984,
Mhm.
and and this young man's life was changed with Gran Turismo like 10 years
10
ago.
years
So,
later.
so
Yeah.
in other words, The Last Starfighter did it first. Just saying.
It's the
Yeah,
old,
for sure.
it's the OG.
For
Yeah.
sure.
I love that
It
movie.
ran, it walks so Gran Turismo can run. That's really
That's
what
right.
it meant.
That is right. Can run and turn only left.
Yes.
But yeah, and there's some other hot picks. Do you
That's a
guys
great
mind if I
choice,
throw
yeah.
another one out?
Please.
Yeah, please.
Enemy Mine.
Yes.
Okay,
Enemy
yeah.
Mine is one of those films that I thought, like, you took two excellent actors. You have Dennis Quaid, you have Louis Gossett Jr., and you do with this what Asimov did with sci-fi, what Bradbury did, and what so many other greats who were writers. They used sci-fi as a platform to discuss socio-political topics in a way that did not call out a specific group or single out a specific person, but you were able to address very human experiences in a very inhuman, or rather, I should say, non-human platform, right? And Enemy Mine does a phenomenal job of giving you the one character that the audience can identify with and make them the outcast in a complete society, and then having to find a way to like integrate and incorporate. I thought it was just of course, when I was like 5 and
None
I'm
of
watching
that.
this movie, I didn't think of
None
that.
of that subtext. Yeah.
But it didn't stop me from having those feelings of like understanding what it meant to not be the one who is accepted, right?
Right.
To not have it so easy. And I thought I think that's a brilliant film, again, that I think a lot of people have lost track of over the years.
That's an interesting one. That was one I remember in school, I don't know, in a social studies class or something, where we were talking about this concept of the other and the fear of the other that you hear talked about. And as we were going through it, it was a difficult concept. And then I thought, oh no, this is like Enemy Mine. Like, it's just that we don't understand each other. We don't know. And so that fear that comes from somebody who's different, and things like that. So that's a great choice. And that's what I love about what sci-fi can do. Like you said, you can take these deep topics and these hard topics to discuss, and then you put them in space or on an alien world, or you do something like that, and then it becomes easier to discuss those things and make the points that you want to make. And I mean, Star Trek has been doing that for decades, and
that's what makes
one of
the
reasons I
original
enjoy
series
that
so
show.
great. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it was not political back in the 60s, if you listen to some fans. They're
Of
wrong.
course not. No.
Yeah.
No, of course.
Now it's all woke.
So
it just happened now, not in 1966. Go ahead, Tracy.
I don't remember. So Jake, what ones do you think of? I mean, granted, this isn't specifically your era, but what else comes to mind for you?
Yeah, welcome to being young, Jake.
Yeah. So it's not, but and kids today don't know this, but Saturday mornings, right? You'd wake up in the morning, you'd watch cartoons, and it was great. But then, like 10 or 11 o'clock, the cartoons would stop, and a lot of the networks would play old movies that had been and they were on TV and they were edited for TV, whatever. And that's where I watched a lot of movies. The cartoons were great, but I'd stick around for I think that's how I watched The Predator for the first time, which was probably the only way I was going to be able to watch The Predator, because it was edited for TV content.
Sure.
And that has led to some interesting experiences as I watch those same movies not edited, and like, that was a scene I was not aware of.
And automobiles. I remember our discussion.
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
Jake did not know the scene with the rental car.
I did, before we watched it. I did know about it. Stop. When I've grown up and watched it,
Tracy had to correct Jake and be like, "That's not Chris Farley. That's John Candy. You wouldn't understand."
Yeah.
Because you're so young, Jake.
Wow.
See, it's funny because we're old.
Yeah, it is funny because you are old. Anyway, one movie that does stand out to me that I remember pretty fondly, and I think of it every time I watch Wall-E, is Short Circuit. Johnny Five.
Yes.
I loved Short Circuit. And this is something that can only exist in the 80s, where like this just happens. You've got this robot that's sentient and alive and crazy and wacky, fun ensues, and everybody just kind of like it's just fine that the robot's there. It's like it's normal, it's fine, and like it was just you talk about the zeitgeist, robots and stuff. They were becoming so popular in the 80s, and the idea
Yeah.
of what they could be, from droids and Star Wars to the robot controller that you had for the Nintendo to like all sorts of stuff. Short Circuit
that
just fit right
Nintendo
in with
robot.
that.
Yep, that Nintendo
And then the robot that
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
go ahead. No, the Nintendo robot, go ahead.
Yeah, so that was, prior to the Wii, that
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
the most profoundly, like, amazing / useless controller peripheral of all
Oh
time.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
and really, like, it had one job. Its job was to, like, hold, like, its job was to, like, open doors for you in games,
Right.
where they had
Right.
this mechanic, and it was Rob the Robot. Rob was an acronym for, I don't know, robot. Anyway, so
Because everything
they
was, yeah.
as everything was Robbie. You couldn't call it Robbie the Robot, that was already trademarked, but it would,
Right.
like, it had, like, this top that it would, like, spin and then drop onto the buttons to hold the button down. It was very, very limited in its ability,
Mhm.
but it didn't change the fact that not only did you have did you have video games in your home in a way that massively exceeded the capabilities of the Atari, right?
Right.
Right.
But you also had a freaking robot. Oh, I'm gonna go home. I'm done playing dodgeball for the day. I'm gonna go home and play video games with my robot,
Right.
you plebes.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
what it would do is it would push like one of two buttons, and then it would like open
But
doors
it
for
was
you in
so cool.
two video games. There were
But
like two video games that were
It's like the Power Glove. If you were lucky enough to have a Power Glove,
listen.
it's so bad. That statement has two meanings if you're from the 80s.
I didn't ever have the Power Glove, but I sure coveted one.
Listen.
Did you have one?
The
I had
Power
one.
Glove, awesome. My favorite thing about the Power Glove is the movie Wizard, where it is like a
Yes.
2-hour advertisement just for the Power Glove. When he pulls that
Yes.
out, and you're like, that is the most awesome thing.
Prior
That
to
Super
the-
Mario Brothers 3, that's what I got out of the movie.
Yep.
Is you got to get both of those things.
I actually talked my parents into taking me to that movie just so I could see the footage of Super Mario Brothers 3 that played at the end of the movie.
Yes. Kids at home who don't know what we're talking about, think about the next release of Fortnite, but before anyone else could see it. It was kind of like
And
that.
you couldn't see it online. There was
No.
streaming. There was no teaser trailer.
There weren't people leaking it for clout or anything.
Yeah,
It
this
was
was the debut.
Yeah, you had to wait for it to be printed
Yeah.
in a newspaper. We'll talk about that sometime. But I had the Power Glove, and it required that you had like this 3-point sensor rig that sat on top of your television. I got the Power Glove for Christmas, and I was so excited. And yes, I felt like half RoboCop, but the way that I set it up and where I set it up, people would walk into the room and immediately trip over the cable for the sensors, and the sensors kind of got
Yeah.
banged up a little bit. But
Mhm.
also, irrespective of that, like the interact system, the interaction of the Power Glove was one of those things that on paper sounded so cool, and it looked really cool in the movie The Wizard with Fred Savage. It
Yes.
looked really
It did.
cool, and the line in that movie is, "It's so bad." And in the 80s, bad was a good thing. That was
Yep.
like
Michael
was
Jackson did a whole song about it.
he did a whole song about it, right? And that made
Yeah.
the slang. It's like saying something's the bomber off the, I don't know, the he's whatever, kids. Anyway, so like we had this glove, but you would punch in a code. It had like a keyboard on the forearm, and you would punch in a code to configure what each finger did, and you know what the motion of the hands did and stuff like that. But I found that they included a code that's just like, look, worst case scenario, punch in this code, and on the forearm there are all the buttons that are the same as the controller. You can just use your forearm as the controller. And no joke, almost immediately, I like, after trying for like an hour to play using the motion and all that stuff, I almost immediately reverted to just using it like an NES controller that had fingers. So that was
Yeah.
fun. It was a good time. Childhood was a good thing.
But it looked cool. I mean,
it was so bad.
let's be honest. It was so bad.
And then it was so bad. It was just
was
a bad interface.
Yeah.
But don't worry, there's a robot that can do two things to help you out.
Yeah, you've always got Rob to fall back on.
You've always got Rob. We'll always have Rob.
Your power glove, your Rob, and your blaster. You're good to go, man.
Oh yeah.
On
They were
another
preparing us
episode,
for the robot apocalypse.
they were on another episode in the future, to which I'm totally inviting myself right now. We should
Please.
talk about like
Okay.
classic video game consoles and stuff, because there was another Nintendo peripheral that was way ahead of its time that I would love to talk to you about, that had to do with like motion and gestures way before anyone else was doing it. But anyway, that is not the purpose of this episode.
Okay.
I'm just teasing a
There's a
potential
teaser.
episode in the future.
We're just
Yeah.
we're just gonna leave that out there hanging. But yeah, Short Circuit brought in all of that love for
Mhm.
robots and things
Yeah, it
like that,
did.
and it was just hilarious. And
That and shoulder-mounted
I just
laser
remember
cannons.
really,
Yes.
yes, well, of course, which is what everybody really wanted. Let's
That's
be honest.
yes,
So,
yes.
I mean, that's Rhodey basically ripped that off in the Avengers franchise as War Machine.
Yeah, way
He
to
basically
go.
stole it from Johnny Five.
That's so
What
true
a
though.
copycat.
Meanwhile, the Predator is like, "Hey, what about me?
Over here.
I was vaporizing people with my shoulder cannon long before Johnny Five."
The 80s was a weird time though when we talk about these movies like Predator and like RoboCop.
Yeah.
We mentioned RoboCop.
Yeah.
RoboCop is so bizarre because that movie is so violent and so not child friendly. And then you had like the animated RoboCop series and toys that you could buy of RoboCop and
Yes.
things. What was wrong with us in the 80s? Like,
Yeah.
No. It's not.
And
what
so
was
then you
wrong
think,
with us.
I'm going to go watch this movie as a 10-year-old, and then you watch it and you're scarred for life because it is so violent.
Oh,
Like,
RoboCop's
it was a weird
incredibly
time.
violent for the time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you're shooting a male who is assaulting a woman, and when you're shooting him in the crotch
Mhm.
with a burst fire automatic pistol, yeah, that was like the height of violence at that time. I remember that
Uh-huh.
movie being extremely controversial, but you're absolutely right. The Saturday morning cartoon dropped, and in all honesty, as many cartoons were at that time, it was simply a medium for selling the toys.
It absolutely
Right.
was.
Yeah.
And the cartoons, if the cartoon was based on a live action movie such as RoboCop in this case, the movie itself was already kind of like absurd, but in a
Right.
great way. Like it was actually like the way they made RoboCop was actually pretty fantastic,
Right.
given the time and the limitations compared to our current technology. But then the Saturday morning cartoon happens, and the Saturday morning cartoon is even more absurd, just less bloody, right? Like there's all like these weird, like we had Inspector Gadget, and then Inspector
Right.
Gadget was the nerd and RoboCop was the jock, right?
Yeah.
And then for those who don't know, it used to be that being a nerd was not good, but now it's
No.
awesome.
Ew.
Now it's the best thing ever. Anyway, so like the cartoon was like way over the top, and then the toys happen. The toys are like, guess what? Now we have missiles, and it's like this is the gun that they have you put on the action figure is 3/4 the size of the action figure. It was like,
Yeah,
and then
it was
like,
huge.
and then yeah, between the power of Transformers making every toy have to change into something else,
Mhm.
Yes.
and things like Brave Star, where like all the weapons had to be like gaudy and comically large.
Right.
Then like RoboCop happens, and it's like, well, I guess we're just gonna transform into flying vehicles. We're gonna have guns the size of Buicks, you know? So like,
Yeah.
and you know what? They were awesome. Every toy was awesome. And every child today who's buying Fortnite action figures, you're welcome, because we did it first.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. The action figures that came from movies and cartoons in the 80s
Yeah.
were awesome. Were so cool. I don't know, Tracy, what are some more movies from the 80s?
We didn't touch as much on the fantasy side, but do you guys remember Dragon Slayer?
Yes.
Yes.
81 film. That's one that I saw on those Saturday morning or Saturday early afternoon things and just fell in love with. That was
Absolutely.
pre House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones.
Yes, it was. Before George R.R. Martin taught us the meaning of loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I hadn't seen Dragon Slayer until about
It's been a while.
2 years ago. I saw it for the very first time. I knew of it. I'd
Okay.
never watched
Mhm.
it. And what was amazing about that film, in my opinion, and I think this is probably a lot of people's opinions, is that what they did to make the dragon a living thing in the film was surprisingly effective and
Yeah.
absolutely fabulous. Like
Mhm.
no CG, all practical, and a beautiful rendering of a ferocious, fire-breathing reptilian monster. You know.
Yeah. And that brings up a good point as we talk about a lot of these movies, the special effects and the things that they did with the practical effects. To me, it's what makes a lot of the CGI so hard to handle for
Uh,
me because I get it and I know that that's the direction we're going. We're never going to go back completely to practical effects, but
right.
there's just something
There's
real and
something
solid
about
when
it.
you're doing the practical effects and the puppetry or whatever it is to make it the miniatures, things like that to make it feel more, I don't know, solid
There's
and
some
real.
weight
And
to it, or yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So
So
much of
and I
CGI
love
seems to just float, you know? It doesn't seem to have any kind of tangible weight to it.
Well, and then not just that, but like the one thing that we have not yet overcome is the fact that humans have this innate, like all of us have this ability to detect the uncanny valley, right? Like
Right.
we have this uncanny valley filter, this idea that something can approach being a living thing or a tangible thing, but can't quite get there. It's asymptotically, not able to reach it. And whenever that happens, it our brains can see it, it can sense it, it filters it, and like we kind of try to suspend disbelief so that we can accept it. And there is some extremely believable CGI out there, but you know
Indiana
it
Jones.
when you see it,
Yeah.
right?
mhm,
You know it when you see it, and it takes you out of that suspension of disbelief just a touch. Whereas practical effects, like, yeah, it might be on a blue screen, Star Wars or whatever, but you have to know that that Millennium Falcon was handcrafted and that it's a
Right.
physical thing
yeah,
you could reach out and touch.
Mhm.
That is something that we have not yet been able to achieve with CG. CG can enhance practical effects, but
Right.
it has we even with all the advancements we have with de-aging and deep fakes and all that stuff, we still cannot quite replace the real thing. And
Right.
our
Right. Right.
brains have the amazing ability to sense and suss that out.
which is good because that's probably going to come in handy in the coming years as AI and CG gets more abundant.
Yeah.
Truth.
Uh,
Yeah.
so the 2024 election, for example, that skill and that ability is going to come in handy, folks.
Yeah.
Don't worry,
So,
TikTok's going to win the next one, so it's fine.
it's fine.
So before we go, Krebs, for those that haven't seen Kroll, give them like the
Oh,
I know, shame on them, but Jake, but
Hey,
no, Jake,
wow, thanks, Tracy.
it's been a long time since I've seen this, so I'm
yeah,
excited to go
absolutely.
back and revisit this on the big screen. But tell them, give them the basic plot and why they need
Yeah,
to come out and see
absolutely.
this Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. And also thank you very much for having a show where like we don't knock people's taste in movies and stuff, but then
Oh no,
immediately shame them for not watching one. Anyway,
yeah,
so yeah, Krull. So Krull is a movie that billed itself as sci-fi fantasy, and to my understanding, it was the first film to take on that sort of like token designation. In fact, I'm not even sure if any other film did that afterward, but they got together to make this film, and the basic plot synopsis, if you look at it at a very, very surface level, the basic plot synopsis is a prince of one. I'm sorry, let me back up a second. An alien invader known as the Beast, with his army, the Slayers, travels in his spaceship known as the Black Fortress, which doubles as his palace and base of operations. And it lands on this alien world, the world of Krull. Krull is the name of the planet, not a character, but the planet's also a character. Anyway, so it lands on Krull. And it's an invading force. And the idea is that the beast has conquered other planets. It is a conquering entity.
Mhm.
That's what it does. And there is a prince from one kingdom and a princess from another kingdom. These kingdoms, uh, are warring houses, pseudo Capulets Montagues type,
Yeah.
but they have a common enemy, the beast and his slayers. And so the prince and the princess have decided to wed in order to unite the kingdoms and to form this union such that they can fight against this alien invader. But as they are going through the wedding ceremony, the castle is invaded, the princess is kidnapped, the prince is shot by one of the alien weapons, and the beast steals the bride. For the remainder of the film, the prince is joined by a wise old man, the old one from the Granite Mountains, Ynir, played by Freddie Jones, and must obtain a weapon that he thought only to be myth and legend, known as the glaive, which is probably the most iconic element of this film.
Mhm.
And with the power of the glaive and with the help of a few friends he makes along the way, he must ingress the Black Fortress, save his bride to be, and vanquish the beast. Now, this is a very like
Sure.
surface explanation, right? And it sounds very sword and sorcery-esque, and it's like, oh, damsel in distress, prince goes on the hero's journey, yada yada. But I'd like to throw out a few like bonus things here that I think make the movie even better. First of all, when I watched this movie, I showed it to a friend a handful of years ago, and she had gone through. She had just like wrapped up or she was wrapping up her college education. She was doing like, excuse me, she's doing like gender studies, women's studies, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And she took exception with the fact that this was yet another damsel in distress movie, and it really made me think, like to see it from her perspective. I've always enjoyed this as a kid, but I hadn't really viewed it through that lens.
Mhm.
And so what I appreciated about it is that it made me think about it. And then I realized the truth of this movie is not that the princess is the damsel in distress, but rather it revealed something I'd never thought of. You see, in this film, there is a prophecy that is mentioned both at the beginning and at the end. And the prophecy says, and I quote, "A girl of ancient name shall become," I'm sorry, shall be, "a girl of ancient name shall become queen, and she shall choose a king, and together they will rule our world, and their son will rule the galaxy." Now, I had asked these questions. I was like, okay, hang on a second. The beast is an alien invader. He's giant. He's seemingly omnipotent.
Mhm.
Why did he steal a redhead from her wedding? Like, that they don't seem very compatible,
Uh-huh.
and he's constantly trying to force her to choose him to be her groom, right? Like, he's like, "You will choose me to be your king," is what he says in the movie. And he keeps trying to coerce her into this, but he doesn't force her in any way, and he doesn't kill
Mhm.
her, and he just holds on to her and says, "You will choose me." And it made me wonder about this for like after I had this experience with this friend, and then I realized the truth. And here's the truth: the most powerful person on the entire planet is this one young lady, because
Mhm.
she is the girl of ancient name who will become queen, and she will choose a
Mhm.
king, says the prophecy, right? So it's her choice. She can't be forced into it. She gets to choose, and whoever she chooses, they will rule this planet, and their offspring, their son specifically, will be the ruler of the galaxy. The beast is a concrete entity. This is his long-term goal. He has to get her to choose him, and she has all the power. So it's not a typical damsel in distress movie,
Mhm.
because she is
Interesting.
the most powerful piece on the board, and the prince is the one who's trying to rescue her because she holds all the power to the entire galaxy.
I like that.
Interesting.
I like that.
So come see Kroll, everybody.
I was going to say, there's your endorsement to come see Kroll Saturday, July 29th. You don't want to miss it. I mean, on the big screen, digitally remastered, fully remastered by Krebs. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
I mean, it
Personally,
might get better
yes.
than that if it was done by Sony, who still owns the rights. But yes, it will be better than bad. It's good.
Yep. Yes.
So it's
Plus,
an
it's all for a good cause. $8 donation to
$8
Primary Children's
donation.
Hospital. All of that helps to make things better for kids who are going through some pretty rough stuff. And so anything that we can do to help Primary Children's in their mission to help those kids, I think is a great thing. 9:30 is when the doors open.
9:30, the doors open to the public. 10 o'clock is the pre-show, and 10:30 is the show.
And the link, if somebody wants to just donate, they can't make it to the movie, tinyurl.com/Kroltimate, correct?
That is correct. And every donation, what I've kind of happened upon is the very truth that like every dollar makes a miracle possible. That
Really
was something
does.
that I
Mhm.
kind of realized for myself, and I 100% agree and believe in it. Um, for whatever it's worth, I am not attending this event for free. I made the first donation, but
Nice.
I've known some people in some fan groups as well as some personal friends who obviously they can't make it because they live in different parts of the country, but they have
Right.
been very quick to donate. And what a wonderful thing that they have given so generously to Primary Children's Hospital. Fun fact: Primary Children's Hospital is the only hospital of its kind in a 400,000 square mile area.
Wow.
Yeah.
It serves as the life-saving entity for children of various incredible and difficult illnesses, diseases, cancer, neurological disorders, all that stuff. They serve as the life-saving hub for multiple states, over 400,000 square miles. And they are trying their best to open a second facility. And though our donation might be a drop in the bucket, it's still a drop in a very needed bucket.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Krebs, thank you so much. And of course, please go check him out on Dungeon Crawlers Radio and the whole gang there.
Oh yeah,
we've
I have a
enjoyed having you
podcast
on the
too.
show. Yeah. Well, we plug the important stuff, right? And then we'll we'll throw the other stuff on at the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm over here. I'm over here just like, well, I guess I'm part of this show now.
Hey,
Like this
yeah.
is that's no, yeah. Dungeon Crawlers Radio. It's actually been around. We're in our 15th year, I believe it is. We've been around for about 15
Wow.
years, and we're a geek culture podcast. We cover primarily tabletop gaming, but we've also been interviewing a ton of authors, both very famous like R.A. Salvatore and Brandon Sanderson, as well as some of the more indie authors like Jeffrey Gardner and a number of others that we've interviewed on the show. And it's been super fun. It's been a blessing in my life to meet so many fabulously creative people, and we've been very fortunate to have them on the show. So come check out Dungeon Crawlers Radio. Throughout 15 years of shows, there's probably at least one episode you'll like. Also, 2 episodes that celebrate different anniversaries of Kroll. So there you have it.
2 episodes.
Oh, we have, yeah, we did because I forced my co-hosts into acknowledging that this film exists.
Okay.
And we did 2 very special episodes. One that was like the 38th anniversary, I think, and then the 39th. It was me, my older brother, and my older sister. The original, because I don't know if you knew this or not, but I saw Kroll in theaters as a kid, and we saw it together, this little family that had gone through a very difficult and messy situation. And this is one of those things that like just brought absolute joy to our lives. So we did a special episode together, just the siblings. So yeah, go check out Dungeon Crawlers Radio. And I don't know, find something that you like there, because I'm sure there's absolutely something. And thank you guys. Thank you so very much. Movies that make us, I'm a cinephile, and I absolutely love what you guys are doing. Thank you for having me on the show. I had a blast, absolutely disrupting everything you did today. Thank you so much.
It's perfect.
This
It was
pretty
great.
much how our
Nothing.
show goes.
Yeah, that's how we typically go on tangents. We disrupt ourselves. It's fine. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Krebs. You are a great knowledge of movies, and we just appreciate your contribution today, and the event that you're putting together I think is a great thing, and so we are excited for that as well. If you don't follow us on social media, everyone that's listening, and Krebs as well, if you don't follow us on social media, please do so. We are everywhere. We're even on that new Threads thing going on. I don't know what that's all about, but we're there. And what's that?
The Twitter killer.
The Twitter killer. No, it's kind of, I don't think so. So it did for a minute, and then like the engagement dropped off completely. Anyway, but we're there, and you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting the show. We appreciate it. And until next time,
we will see you at the movies this Saturday, 9:30 a.m. at Jordan Commons in Sandy, Utah.
Perfect.
And whether you've never seen Kroll or you adore the film almost as much as I do, always remember to be epic and don't suck.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later.
This has been an Age of Geek media production.